Mid-May on Astarte Farm begins to show how important the propagation house is to the whole operation. The multiple successions of plantings that enable us to keep picking our crops over a long harvest window are beginning to squeeze us for space. With 2 weeks yet to go before our usual frost-free date, it is a challenge to find any room on the bench tops and important to ensure adequate air movement around the crowded young plants simply to avoid the outbreak of any diseases. At this time of year, hydration is just as crucial for these little plants as it is for the crew, and careful scheduling helps keep their potting soil at the correct level of moisture for proper growth. An early Friday morning found the crew pulling and cleaning green garlic from High Tunnel Number 1. Green, fresh garlic is a special springtime treat, and this harvest from one of our tunnels is a good 2 months ahead of our expected field harvest date. In green garlic, the bulbs are juicier and the leaves are tender enough to be ground up in a food processor to make green garlic pesto. You may never miss the basil, but any overwintered greens like kale or spinach can be added for a satisfying nutritional boost. Next door in High Tunnel Number 2, the beets, lettuce, radishes, and turnips are coming on strong. Right in the middle of the central pathway, you may be able to see several flats of tomato transplants, still in their pots and getting acclimated to their new home. These early tomatoes will enjoy the protected growing conditions in the tunnel, where they will be shielded from the wind and have their leaves kept dry thanks to our drip irrigation. Because they are grown in a living soil that is rich in fungal, bacterial, and protozoic life, their flavor should be outstanding. They will only get enough irrigation water to get their roots well established, and from that point on they will become what is known as dryland tomatoes. Their roots will extend up to 10 feet in all directions, passing through a matrix of companion plant roots and neighboring food crop roots, and in some instances their roots will even reach beyond the confines of the tunnel and soak up any rainfall from the alleyways. Please note the pollinator plants getting established at the end of the rows. I like to think of these row-end pollinator plantings as welcome mats for the pollinator and predator species that keep our pests at bay. High Tunnel Number 3 is starting to transition from cool weather crops to warm and hot weather crops. The carrots are getting ready to show a spurt of top growth, and their long, slender roots will be plumping up and taking on a deep, rich orange color shortly thereafter. Outside the high tunnels, Jim's experimental strawberry patch is showing a strong flush of white flowers, which are promising a good crop. Part of Jim's learning curve will be to learn the proper thinning techniques that promote berry size and flavor. The success of this patch so far has inspired the crew to lay out 5 new strawberry beds in the field. The plants are arriving in a week, and in a year's time they will become a U-pick patch for our CSA shareholders. Speaking of berries, the blueberries have fully flowered, and the size of the crop now largely depends on the number of pollinators that we can attract to them. Last week on a brief midday visit, I counted 1 bumblebee and 4 different native bee species working on a single bush. It was a bit on the cool side this morning when I took these shots, but if you have sharp eyes, you may be able to see another single bumblebee darting her way through the flowers. The sharp declines in insect populations in the last few decades is truly alarming. 20 years ago, honeybees would have been the vast majority of the insects working these bushes, and with their steep decline, we are very grateful to the native species that are now carrying the load. Blueberries, like so many fruit crops, are absolutely dependent on insect activity for pollination and therefore fruit production. Unlike the few wind-pollinated crops like corn, or the perfect flowered crops like beans and tomatoes that can fertilize themselves, Bush and tree fruits cannot bear fruit without insect activity. On a cheerier subject, the shallots and garlic are making good growth despite the wild spring temperature fluctuations. These crops are basically clones of all of their preceding crops because each plant is close to an exact copy of its parent. The full heads of garlic that we save for seed each summer eventually get split up into cloves that are planted individually in the fall. Subtle variations can occur over the winter dormancy and during the growing season, and the farmer herself affects the variability of these crops strongly by being the one to choose which bulbs to save for seed. It is that human element that makes all the difference between laboratory cloning and garlic cloning. In addition, on a no-till farm, the activity of the teeming biological life within the soil contributes to significant flavor variations in both garlic and shallots. Even deviations in skin color and clove numbers can be found in a garlic variety that has been grown continuously on a specific farm. The only downside to this natural cloning system is the possibility of allowing any kind of garlic virus to get established. Totally harmless to humans and animals, the viruses can severely stunt the crop, even leading to crop failure. Careful observation of the crop as it grows ensures the culling of infected plants and prevents the spread of those diseases. Back up to the south side of the propagation house, you can see another succession of lettuce plants on the hardening off benches. Out here they're exposed to the direct rays of the sun and the full force of our winds to toughen them up enough to withstand the shock of transplanting. For those little plants, it must be a relief to finally get tucked into some real soil as opposed to potting soil. And at that point they can begin to draw up all the complex soil compounds that contribute to their amazing flavors. Anyone who thinks lettuce tastes like an iceberg should try a nibble of these complexly colored and wildly textured lettuces. Yup, back to the static compost pile with its beautiful bloom of mushrooms. Now, instead of asking for likes and subscribes, I'd like to find out what you want to know about our no-till, no-spray market garden operation. Would you prefer to see single subject videos like last year's pollinator habitat or garlic planting episodes? Do you like following the seasonal progress on Astarte Farm with short snippets on a few of the crops that are currently growing? Or would you prefer a compilation of clips, one that follows the crop from seed to harvest? Please use the comment section below to ask questions or reach me through the farm email at astartefarm@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.